If you've watched this far, you already know too much. You know the rules, you know the biology, you know the danger. But there's something I haven't told you, because it's the part I wish wasn't true. Control isn't free. It costs something, and sooner or later the debt comes due. Sleep becomes the enemy. People think nightmares are just dreams with blood on them, but for a werewolf, nightmares are training sessions. The wolf learns you, learns your fears, learns what breaks you. You fall asleep human, and somewhere around 3 a.m. you feel something move behind your eyelids. Not a dream, a presence. A second mind stretching its claws through your subconscious, rehearsing how to take your body apart so it can use it better next time. You wake up sweating, heart racing, knowing that the wolf got stronger while you were unconscious. And you got weaker. The hunger shifts. At first it's just meat cravings, protein, calories, nothing strange. Then one night you catch yourself staring at the neighbour's dog a bit too long, not because you want to pet it, but because something inside you is measuring it. Instinct doing math your conscious mind didn't ask for. Weight, speed, how fast it could run, how deep you'd have to bite. You blink and the thought is gone, but the shame stays. Because you didn't imagine it, you didn't hallucinate. It was the wolf, testing appetites, preparing. You start noticing things you shouldn't, shadows with weight, silhouettes that shouldn't be there, something moving across the veld at 2 a.m, too big to be a cat, too fluid to be human. Sometimes yellow eyes watching from the tree line, silent, patient. And the worst part? You can't tell if it's a real threat or if the wolf in your skull is hallucinating for you, trying to lure you outside, into the dark, where instincts win. You learn to distrust your own senses, your own brain. Imagine that for a moment, your entire survival relying on instincts you can't be sure are yours. Control isn't won, it's negotiated. This is the part nobody believes. You don't suppress the wolf, you bargain with it. You tell yourself, just let me keep my hands steady today. Take the strength, but leave my judgment. Take the instincts, but don't touch my memories. You trade away little pieces of yourself just to survive another night. And every time you give in, every time you allow the wolf a moment of dominance, it remembers. It takes note. It plans. Control is a fragile treaty between two creatures that both want to live inside one skull that's only built for one. Some werewolves lose the treaty completely. They don't snap. They dissolve. They start forgetting their own handwriting, their favourite food. Their language gets slower, simpler. Instinct bleeds into everything. They stare at people differently, move differently, eat differently. Then one day, they wander off into the wilderness and never come back. Not because they're running, because the wolf finally convinced them that the human part wasn't necessary anymore. Those are the permanent wolves. But they're not just monsters. They're warnings. A glimpse of what happens if you lose your treaty. And here's the part I hate admitting. I don't know which side is winning anymore. Human or wolf. Logic or instinct. Me or the thing wearing my bones like a coat. Some nights I wake up with dirt under my nails and no memory. Some nights I hear breathing in my room and realize it's my own. Too deep, too animal, too wrong. And every sunrise feels like a countdown. You wanted realism? Here it is. Being a werewolf isn't about claws or fangs. It's about watching yourself disappear one instinct at a time. I'm still here, for now, because next time I'm going to tell you what the wolf has been whispering to me. There's a moment every werewolf hits, a moment nobody warns you about, where the wolf stops being a feeling and becomes a voice. Not words at first, just impulses, suggestions, a push behind the eyes. You tell yourself it's instinct, biology, reflex. But then one night you hear something inside you that sounds like thought. Not yours, something different, hungrier, sharper. And suddenly you realise you're not alone in your own skull. The wolf doesn't speak in language, it speaks in urges. It doesn't say, go hunt. It just flashes images, hunger, running, hot breath on cold air, the taste of blood, the crack of bone. It shows you how easy it would be to stop pretending to be human for one night, how freeing it would feel, how right. It's not trying to convince you, it's trying to remind you what you are capable of if you just stop resisting. And the terrifying part? A small piece of you agrees. The whispers get louder when you're alone. Silence is its territory. Stillness is its hunting ground. You sit in your room, lights off, trying to sleep, and suddenly you feel it, standing just behind your thoughts, breathing with you, waiting. The wolf never sleeps. It just lets you think you're in control until you're too tired to hold the reins. Then it leans forward and nudges your mind with a thought that isn't yours, a suggestion, a desire, a command delivered like a whisper dragged through bone. You start losing track of who initiated your actions. You snap at someone. Was that you or the wolf? You wander outside at 1 a.m. Your decision or its nudge? You catch yourself staring at someone's neck a little too long, and you don't know if the hunger was yours or borrowed. It's not possession, it's influence, a slow erosion of boundaries inside your own consciousness. You become two creatures using one mind, like a shared apartment with no locked doors. Some nights, the wolf doesn't whisper, it argues. Not with words, but with pressure, emotion, instinct. You want to stay indoors. The wolf pushes your heart rate up, floods your muscles with the urge to run. You want to stay calm. The wolf spikes adrenaline and flashes memories of prey. You want to sleep. The wolf triggers fear just to keep you awake while it prowls inside your head. Control becomes a wrestling match no one sees because it all happens behind your eyes. And the worst nights? The wolf wins by convincing you that you wanted what it wanted, that the impulse was always yours, that you and it aren't that different. The whisper becomes a warning. Lately, mine has been changing. Not just hunger, not just hunting, not just instinct. It's been directing me, pulling me towards something, a place, a presence, something in the dark that I haven't met yet, but the wolf recognizes. Like a voice calling from far away, and the wolf inside me is straining toward it, like a tether pulled tight. And I don't know what's worse, the fact that the wolf knows something I don't, or the fact that it wants me to find it. Because whatever the wolf is leading me toward, whatever it's whispering about, it's getting closer. I wanted to get away from that place. I wanted to put it behind me. So I walked, by foot through the climb Karoo, past ostrich farms and dust roads that stretched forever under the sun. I told myself movement would help, that distance might quiet the wolf. It didn't. The KKNK was in full swing when I reached Oudtshoorn. Afrikaans music spilling into the streets, laughter, food stalls, crowds packed shoulder to shoulder. Too many people, too many heartbeats. I pulled my hoodie tight and slipped into the mass, trying to feel normal again, trying to remember what it felt like to just be another face. But if you've ever had a dog, a golden retriever maybe, and you throw 10 tennis balls at once, that frantic excitement where it doesn't know which one to chase first, that's what the beast felt like inside me. Overstimulated, electric, hungry. Every movement triggered it, every laugh, every sudden step, every exposed neck. The urge hit like a wave, violent and directionless. Not fear, not anger, prey drive. My vision tunneled, my breathing went ragged. I dropped to my hands and knees right there in the middle of the market, panting, saliva dripping from my mouth. My nails dug into the dirt hard enough to hurt, grounding myself, anchoring what little control I had left. I stared at the ground, blank, unmoving. Then I felt it, a hand on my back, an old man's voice, gentle and confused. "Your man, is ye okay?" The moment he touched me, the wolf surged, hard. Not rage, opportunity. Someone close, someone vulnerable. It pushed, screaming to come out, to plough through the crowd, to tear and bite and end the noise forever. I forced myself to breathe, slow, deep. Each breath felt like holding back a dam. Then hands grabbed my face. A sharp voice cut through the chaos. "Hey, look at me!" A paramedic forced my head up, shouting to her assistant. "Get electrolytes. He's severely dehydrated. Possible sunstroke." 2 men grabbed me under the arms, another at my legs. I didn't fight them. I couldn't. They carried me to the paramedic tent while the world blurred around me. Inside, they stripped off most of my clothes and lowered me into a cold metal tub filled with icy water. The shock should have made me flinch. I didn't react at all. Neither did the wolf. I think it was just as confused as I was. The cold slowed everything. My heart rate dropped. The noise faded. The urge subsided. The paramedic crouched beside me. "What's your name?" The first name that came to mind slipped out. Johanni Visachi. Even as I said it, I thought, what the hell? Why that name? She wrote it down without hesitation and started asking questions. Where I was from, who she could call. "I'm fine," I said. "I just ate something bad." She smiled and shook her head. Clearly not. She leaned in, shone a light into my eyes, clicking her tongue softly, the sound of someone who knows they're being lied to. Then she stood, grabbed a towel and handed it to me. "I can't keep you here, but you need to go home, or at least stay in the shade." I dried off, pulled my clothes back on. "Thank you," I said. She handed me a Powerade. "Drink this, rehydrate." I took it, smiled, and walked out of the tent. Only when I was back in the sun, moving away from the crowd, did it hit me how close that had been. How thin the line was. 1 touch, 1 second longer. I took a long sip and thought to myself, that was way too close. The Karoo didn't care what I was. That was its mercy. Once I left Oudtshoorn behind and kept moving west, the noise fell away fast. Music turned into wind, engines into insects, people into something distant and unreal. I followed fence lines past ostrich farms and dry fields, staying on the edges of things. Wide land, long sight lines, room to react. That day at the festival rewired how I understood danger. Crowds weren't dangerous because people were violent. They were dangerous because stimulus stacked. Too many movements, too many heartbeats, too many potential triggers firing at once. The wolf didn't weaken, it got excited. And excitement was the most dangerous state of all. The heat didn't affect the beast, it eroded me. The sun didn't slow the wolf, it dulled my judgment. Dehydration didn't touch the instincts. It made restraint harder. The beast was stable. I wasn't. So I adapted, not to protect the wolf, but to protect my grip on it. I moved when my mind was sharp, early mornings, late evenings. I rested through the heat, not because the wolf needed shelter, but because clarity mattered. Distance became discipline. I stopped passing through towns. I circled them. If I needed food or water, I waited for quiet hours, stayed downwind, kept my exposure brief. If I heard music, crowds, or generators, I altered course without hesitation. Normal people follow roads. I followed absence. Stillness replaced speed. Running was a mistake. Running spiked heart rate, movement, scent. Out in the open Karoo, when someone appeared unexpectedly, a farmer, a hiker, a vehicle slowing, I stopped completely. Stillness blurs intent. Movement defines prey. I let people pass me instead of crossing their path. I learned how to look unimportant, not wounded, not threatening, just tired. A man no one wanted to talk to. Shoulders slumped, eyes unfocused, movements slow. The wolf hated the posture. That's how I knew it worked. Tulbach taught me caution. Too green, too close to people. Vineyards carry workers, dogs, movement at all hours. I stayed on the ridges, slept above the valley, moved when the fog rolled in and blurred silhouettes. I never entered town. Citrusdal taught me patience. The citrus orchards were alive even at night. Animals, irrigation pumps, night workers. I learned to wait. Some nights I didn't move at all. Stillness isn't wasted time, it's restraint training. Cape Town taught me fear. Not the city itself, the edges. Too many lights, too many smells layered on top of each other. Human scent thick enough to choke on. The wolf was alert there, focused, too interested. So I never went in. I stayed on the outskirts, industrial zones, empty land between highways. I watched the city breathe from a distance and knew, without question, that if I stepped inside fully, something would go wrong. Darling is where I learnt what happens when you try to cage a predator for too long. By then, I had the rules down. Distance, stillness, avoidance. What I didn't understand yet was pressure. You can keep the beast contained, but containment builds tension, and tension always releases somewhere. Darling was quiet, agricultural, rolling land, fences, cattle. It felt safe. That was my mistake. I had been holding the wolf back for too long. Days of suppression, days of discipline layered over instinct. No release, no outlet. The wolf didn't weaken, it coiled. The pressure built slowly, invisibly, like a fault line you don't notice until the ground gives way. The transformation wasn't triggered by hunger. That's the part that still makes me sick. I wasn't starving. I wasn't desperate. I was over-contained. The shift came fast, not because the wolf was rushing, but because it had waited long enough. I remember the exact second controls slipped. One breath human, the next, gone. I came back to awareness, standing in a field I didn't recognize. Moonlight on grass, the smell of cattle thick in the air. 5 of them, dead, not consumed, not even fed on properly, just broken. That's how I knew this wasn't hunting. It was release. Violence without purpose. muscle memory emptying stored pressure. I watched it happen, every movement, every strike, like I was strapped inside my own skull, forced to observe while something else wore my body. I remember everything. That's the curse. After that night, the wolf didn't give the body back. Not immediately. Hours passed, then a day, then another. I stayed in that form, moving, resting, existing, while my human mind sat behind glass, aware but powerless. No voice, no steering, just memory being written into places I never wanted it to reach. That was when I understood something terrifying. Control isn't just about keeping the wolf in, it's about knowing when to let it out. The wolf doesn't disappear when you suppress it, it accumulates. And when it finally surfaces, it doesn't negotiate, it empties itself. Darling taught me that balance matters more than restraint, that denying the beast entirely creates something worse than letting it breathe. From that point on, I changed the rules. I stopped thinking in terms of never. Instead, I thought in terms of where. Safe areas, empty land, no livestock, no people, no scent trails that led back to civilization. Short releases, controlled environments, letting the wolf move, run, exist without targets. Because if you don't allow controlled release, the wolf will choose its own moment, and its choices are always worse than yours. Darling isn't famous for what happened. No headlines, no monsters in the papers, just 5 cattle written off as predator damage by people who didn't want to ask harder questions. But I remember every second. And that's why I tell you this now. A caged predator doesn't become tame, it becomes unstable. And if you ever try to live with something like this inside you, learn when to open the door, or one day it will tear the walls down for you. Langaban came next. I hadn't planned it. My feet just carried me there. It was a place I used to love, fishing at first light, salt on my skin, the ocean stretching wide enough to make problems feel small. Back then my worries were simple. Deadlines, invoices, rent, normal things. Now, standing on the edge of the beach again, all of that felt like it belonged to someone else. Someone who didn't share his body with a predator. I walked the shoreline slowly, keeping distance from people without really thinking about it. Old habits by then. Families were swimming, kids shouting, people laughing the way you only laugh when you believe tomorrow is guaranteed. The wolf didn't surge, it didn't get excited, it just watched. And for the first time, it wasn't hunger I felt, it was grief. That surprised me. I expected the ocean to trigger instincts, movement, bodies, prey. Instead, it triggered memory. The wolf didn't want the people, it wanted the freedom, the space, the wind, the endless horizon. And that's when I realized something important. The beast doesn't only crave violence, it craves existence. I stood there for a long time, watching waves roll in and disappear again. I missed my old life, the ease of it, the ignorance, the luxury of not having to measure every emotion. I missed being able to stand in a crowd without calculating escape routes. I missed swimming without wondering what instincts might wake up halfway through. That life was gone. There was no bargaining that back. And that truth settled in my chest, heavier than any transformation ever had. But Langaban also taught me something else. Something Darling couldn't. You don't survive this by domination, and you don't survive it by denial. You survive it through coexistence. The wolf wasn't my enemy. It was part of me, a part that didn't choose this any more than I did. Trying to erase it had nearly turned me into something worse. Locking it away completely had caused damage I still carry. So standing there, staring at the ocean, I made a quiet promise, not to the wolf, but to myself. I wouldn't try to kill it, and I wouldn't let it rule me. Compromise became the new goal. Structure, boundaries, controlled release. Let the wolf move when it's safe. Let it feel wind, distance, effort. Because a predator denied everything eventually seeks anything. But a predator given space, given limits, can learn restraint. Not obedience, restraint. I left Langaban before sunset, not because I had to, but because staying too long would have hurt more than leaving. Some places remind you of who you were. Others remind you of who you can never be again. Langaban was both. And as I walked away, one thought stayed with me, quiet, steady, and strangely hopeful. Maybe survival isn't about winning against the beast. Maybe it's about learning how to walk beside it without letting it choose the direction. And that lesson might be the only reason I'm still here. I turned back inland. The coast was too full of memory, too full of people. So I went where nothing cared if I existed. Tankwa Karoo National Park. I'd been there before, long before any of this. Dry, open, empty in a way that feels almost hostile. No towns, no crowds, no large predators, just space. That mattered. The Tankwa isn't forgiving, but it's honest. Nothing sneaks up on you out there. You see things coming from kilometers away. That's why I chose it. Springbok moved through the plains in small groups, enough prey to satisfy instinct without pushing it toward desperation. I stayed away from roads, away from tourists, away from anything that reminded the wolf of people. Months have passed since the bite in Sedgefield. Time stopped feeling measured in days. It became measured in moons, hunger cycles, exhaustion. One night, lying on the ground and watching the stars spill across the sky, something finally settled in me. This curse wasn't going away, but it didn't have to end in ruin either. Distance from civilization changed everything. With no pressure, no noise, no constant restraint, the wolf stabilized. I stopped fighting it every second. I let it hunt, a springbok, sometimes two, not in frenzy, not in rage, just function. And in return, something unexpected happened. It stopped pushing so hard. That's when I understood. This wasn't about control. It was about agreement. I gave up most of what passed for normal humanity. Cities, crowds, convenience. In exchange, the wolf stayed in its form, our form, and slowly, reluctantly, allowed me more influence. Not obedience, influence. People use words like tame for that. They're wrong. Taming implies dominance, submission. The wolf recoils from that idea instinctively. This was something else, closer to alignment. Two systems learning to occupy the same body without tearing it apart. Instinct and logic don't merge cleanly. They never will. But they can learn timing, boundaries, priority. It took months in the Tankwa before I felt even a fraction of real balance. And even then, it wasn't peace. It was truce. I stayed in werewolf form most of the time, not because I preferred it, but because switching back invited instability. In that form, the wolf didn't feel threatened. And when it didn't feel threatened, it listened. A little. That was enough. The Tankwa didn't cure me. It taught me how to stop bleeding internally. Out there, under open sky and endless silence, I wasn't human pretending to be a beast. And I wasn't a beast pretending to be human. I was something unfinished, learning how not to destroy itself. And for the first time since Sedgefield, that felt like progress. By now, you know how the first months went after the bite. The mistakes, the close calls, the rules written into muscle and fear. Those lessons kept me functional. I won't say safe. That word doesn't belong in a story like this. But functional was enough to keep breathing. So I moved again. I turned inland toward the Free State. Wide land, flat horizons, nothing to trap sound or scent. I stayed in werewolf form most of the time. That surprises people when I say it out loud. They assume staying human means control. They're wrong. Suppression is unstable. Pressure builds. Release becomes violent. In the wolf's body, things made more sense. The instincts weren't fighting for dominance. They were already home. I didn't control much, but the small amount I did have, that margin was the difference between walking away and leaving something dead behind me. Life or death doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it's decided in inches. The Free State felt exposed. Not dangerous, just honest. You can't hide out there, and neither can anything else. That suited me. I moved mostly at night, crossed farmland wide, followed dry watercourses where scent didn't linger. Livestock stayed far away, people even further. And eventually, the land began to slope. Green crept back into the edges of the world, and then I smelled it before I saw it. Water. The orange river. Wide, slow, ancient. Standing on its banks did something strange to me. The wolf didn't tense. It didn't hunt. It just watched. And for a moment, a rare, fragile moment, so did I. Years before all of this, I'd been here for different reasons. Adventure rowing, days on the water, sleeping under open sky, letting the current decide the pace. Back then, the river felt like freedom. Now it felt like memory. I watched the surface move, steady, indifferent, and realized something that hit harder than any transformation ever had. The river hadn't changed. I had. That was the lesson the Orange River taught me. Some things endure untouched by what we become, and that hurts more than losing them. I missed the simplicity of those old trips, the way exhaustion came from effort, not restraint, the way sleep came without negotiation. I missed trusting my own body. I stayed near the river longer than I should have, not because it was safe, but because it reminded me that life once moved forward without calculation. The wolf didn't push. It didn't need to. Maybe it felt the weight of the water too, the way something can be powerful without being violent. Here's the lesson I took with me when I finally moved on. Control doesn't always come from force. Sometimes it comes from flow, from knowing when to move and when to let something carry you. But rivers are dangerous too. Stay too long, let your guard down, and even something beautiful will drown you without hesitation. That's the lie people believe about survival, that danger always looks sharp and loud. Sometimes it looks calm, endless, patient, and it waits for you to forget what you are. I won't bore you with the mundane parts of my life. You didn't come here to hear about days blending into each other, or how loneliness becomes routine. But something did happen in the Free State. Something that reminded me, brutally, how thin my control really was. A boer saw me. I thought I was hidden, downwind, low, still. I wasn't. He spotted me crossing his field and didn't hesitate. Him and his farm hands piled into a baccy, dust kicking up behind them as they gave chase. I ran, on all fours, full sprint, zigzagging, changing direction, pushing everything I had into speed. It wasn't enough. Engines beat muscle. I heard him shouting over the noise. "What the fuck is die ding? Beat die! Schiet die fucking ding!" The shot came before I could think. A sharp, burning impact tore into my side. I tumbled, rolled hard, and hit the ground, breathing shallow, vision narrowing. The baccy screeched to a halt. They got out slowly, uncertain now, curiosity overtaking fear. I lay there, fighting for breath, fighting for control. The wolf was furious. Every bit of progress I'd made, months of restraint, negotiation, balance, collapsed in seconds. The farmer approached first. He nudged my side with his boot, light, hesitant, trying to understand what exactly he'd found. That was the moment containment failed. I felt myself slip backward, not unconscious, not gone, just displaced. A passenger again. My eyes snapped open and locked onto his. For a heartbeat, maybe less, I had just enough influence left to beg. Not with words, with eyes. Run. Get back in the truck. Leave. He didn't. He took the rifle from one of his hands, worked the bolt and raised it. That was the last human decision in that field. Everything after happened too fast for mercy. The wolf took over completely. One movement, no hesitation. By the time the rifle could fire, it was already over my fangs in his neck before he even realized what was happening. The others ran. They didn't get far. The wolf tore them to pieces. I remember everything. That's the worst part. Every step, every impact, every moment where I could see but not intervene. When it was done, I stood there panting, blood dripping from my muzzle onto the soil. I looked down at my hands, my paws, and felt something I still struggle to name. Grief and justice, both at once. It doesn't make sense. I don't expect it to. I didn't stay. I ran. For 2 days straight. No rest, no thought, just distance. East. By the time I reached Richards Bay, exhaustion finally forced the change back. I shifted into human form briefly, hidden, shaking, not from pain, but from what I knew I'd done. I needed to know. Had they found the bodies? Had anyone connected it to me? The reports came quietly. No suspects, no explanation. The attack was classified as undetermined. No known animal could have caused this. That sentence followed me for years. Here's the lesson I learned, the one I need you to understand. Control is not something you take from the wolf. It's something it allows. And when fear enters the equation, when survival overrides negotiation, the wolf doesn't ask permission. All the rules in the world mean nothing if the wolf decides it's done listening. That day taught me the most important truth of all. I don't decide when I'm in control. I only decide whether I'm in a place where losing it kills no one else. Everything I did after that, every choice, every retreat from civilization, was built around that reality. Because the scariest part isn't that the beast can kill, it's that it will do so convinced it's right. And sometimes, I can't even say it's wrong. After that, I stopped drifting. Moving constantly felt safer on paper. Stay ahead, stay unseen, never leave a pattern. But the truth was the opposite. Every time I moved, I introduced variables I couldn't control. New terrain, new people, new instincts reacting to unfamiliar rhythms. Unexpected events are where mistakes live. And mistakes, for me, don't end with apologies. So I chose stillness, not because it was easier, but because it was predictable. I learned that survival wasn't about distance anymore. It was about containment. One place, known paths, familiar scents. If something happened, or nearly happened, then I moved, not before. I kept to myself, away from roads, away from lights, away from the casual human noise that pulls at the wolf's attention without asking. Civilization is loud in ways people don't notice. Even empty places hum with it. I stayed where that hum faded. Days blurred together, but that was the point. Routine dulled the wolf's restlessness. Familiarity reduced surprise. I wasn't trying to live anymore. I was trying to not become an incident. And slowly, painfully, I learned that isolation isn't loneliness when the alternative is violence. It's discipline. Because the most dangerous thing I can do is keep moving when I don't need to. Have you ever been so angry that you don't feel the moment you lose control? No warning, no escalation, just 0 to blackout in a heartbeat. That's what happened in Richards Bay. I'd been there for months by then, long enough to fade into the background, long enough to become part of the scenery people don't really see. I built a small shelter near the mouth of the lagoon, driftwood, tarpaulin, reeds, far enough from the beach paths to avoid attention, close enough to fish without crossing anyone's line of sight. That afternoon was quiet. I had a small fire going, fish wrapped in foil, the smell of salt and smoke. Then the noise came. Mid-20s, loud, restless, the kind of boredom that looks for something to push against. They saw me and made a decision instantly. Just another homeless guy, safe target, something to poke. The comments started, laughter, insults, mockery dressed as jokes. I didn't react. I smiled. That was my first mistake, because inside me something noticed them. I felt the heat rise, sharp and sudden, but I focused on my breathing. Slow, measured. I'd learned that trick in the Karoo, in Tankwa, in isolation. The wolf stirred, but it didn't surge. Not yet. I asked them calmly to leave me alone. Not a threat, not a plea, just a boundary. That was the second mistake. One of them took offence, not to my words, but to the fact that I'd spoken at all. He picked up a rock and threw it. It hit me hard enough to sting, hard enough to light the fuse. I remember pleading. I remember knowing with terrifying clarity that if they didn't stop, something irreversible was about to happen. They laughed. And then there's nothing. No transition, no pain, no sound. Just the sensation of my body tearing itself open from the inside. Bones snapping, jaw extending, fur pushing through skin like it had been waiting for permission. They were too stunned to run, and I didn't give them time to learn. When awareness returned, it was already over. Blood on the sand, silence where voices had been. And inside me, nothing. No guilt, no horror, no grief, just a cold, hollow absence. The wolf was satisfied. That terrified me more than the killing ever could. I knew I couldn't stay, so I ran. North, inland, away from water, roads, people. I didn't stop until the air changed, thinner, colder, sharper. The Drakensberg swallowed me. Forests, cliffs, valleys that carried sound for kilometres and hid you just as easily. I stayed there for years. No names, no mirrors, no one close enough to trigger anything. I practiced discipline the hard way. Stillness, hunger, control through routine, not dominance, balance, human logic, animal instinct, neither winning, neither erased. A crude kind of peace settled in, unstable, imperfect, but functional. And then something strange happened. I started to feel a pull. Not nostalgia, not memory, something older. A quiet pressure pointing me back toward where it began, the place I was changed. Because wolves, real or not, always circle back to where they were born. And no matter how far I ran, the direction never truly left me.